weary travelers, and welcome. This is episode 9 of the Joint Operations Podcast.
Oh, we're almost done.
Yeah, it's almost over. I'm Brady J. Sadler, and my brother,
Adam,
decided to join me tonight. This episode is called RPGs and Campaign Dreams, because I thought it was a saying, but apparently it's not, because there's like that show. What was that show? You told me the show name.
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Yeah, and there was something about caviar dreams, but I thought it was champagne dreams. But I was like, that's a good pun. But
Champagne wishes and caviar dreams,
yeah,
I believe.
So it's different. But RPGs is like, that reminds me of rocket launchers, so I like it. Anyway, we're gonna talk about all kinds of role-playing games, campaign games, because they're just very, very popular format. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about nothing in particular, like we always do.
Being fat.
I was gonna mention that, because I was gonna mention in my life one of the most exciting things happened, and I'm gonna tell a little story. This might fill the entire banter section, and I apologize if you have anything to add. But last year at Gen Con, we have a couple of buddies from Canada that come visit us, and we all go to Gen Con together. For those of you who are not aware, Gen Con is a popular gaming convention in the Indianapolis area. It's huge. It's one of the biggest conventions for gaming and just hobby stuff in general. But we were getting ready to hang out with our buddies Scott and Mitch, and they're traveling a long way. And I talk a lot about this restaurant nearby called Pizzology, that one of the guys I knew from high school, he's actually the head chef there. And I used to go there and write my books. My first Malice of Light book, The Acrid Sky, I pretty much wrote entirely while drinking cocktails at Pizzology and eating pizza while waiting for my daughter to finish her cooking class next door. So I lived there. I love that place. It's like my weekly, I go there at least once a week. But because I talk about it all the time, our buddies were coming down like, yeah, let's go to Pizzology. I want to check this place out. I was like, oh yeah, great. So I'm at Adam's house and we're waiting for them to, they're getting really close to our town, and we're going to meet them at Pizzology. So I was like, I'll call ahead to see if there's room, and no one's answering. I'm like, but I know it's probably busy because it was like a Friday or Saturday, but they weren't answering. And Adam jokingly said, maybe it burnt down or something like that. And I was like, whatever.
I should just stop making jokes.
Yeah. And then I get on Facebook, and Pizzology's page has an active live stream at that exact moment I'm on there. And there was smoke coming out of the building because there was a fire, and one of the hostesses was like filming it, and the fire station was out there to put it out and everything. So they had a oven fire or something, but it's like Adam joking said maybe it's a fire, and it was. And the place that was like last August around Gen Con, wasn't it?
2 ago?
No, it was last year, because it's 2 Gen Cons ago.
Yeah.
Because this year Gen Con, we were jokingly, I work with Scott, my buddy, at my day job, and we were joking a lot about like, oh yeah, when you guys come for Gen Con the next time, it'll be back up. But it was still down. They were still remodeling and everything after the fire. So they just now reopened, and I think that was like last weekend, and I've already been there like 3 times since then. So I'm back.
Yeah, we took our older brother Paul there last night. Was it last night?
Yeah,
for Oliver's birthday party. He's visited for Oliver's birthday party. And yeah, he went to check it out while he was in town, and I ate way too much because I had like 3 donuts at that party anyway, and then I had a giant chicken parmesan.
Yeah, eating is hard. Eating is hard to do under control.
No, it's very easy to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I meant like eating smartly. But yeah, that was pretty much my entire week. I feel like was thinking about Pizzology again and having it 3 times and feeling like an idiot because I always get pasta there. And I mean,
also it's Halloween candy season. Like I just have Halloween candy everywhere. So
I haven't had much this year. It's weird.
Well, I've eaten a lot, but it's all like tons of it at the house because daughter went out trick or treating, brought home tons of candy, and she filled this whole bag of bad candy, and like in there was like a whole Snickers bar, a whole bag of peanut M&Ms, and like people giving out full size candy. But I'm like, this is like the best candy. What are you keeping? Because this is all the good stuff. So I have a big collection of candy she didn't want.
Yeah, I usually like dig out all the Reese's cups, but I didn't see any of this here, so I didn't really do much Halloween candy. Dressed up like Robin again for like the.
You do that every day.
But it was like I think the 4th or 5th Halloween I did that. A funny story though, another side tangent. I went to Riley's orchestra performance, and they did a bunch of Halloween music. And there was some girl that was doing the screams because they have these random screams in the middle of their pieces. She's a really good screamer, but she had a Robin costume on, like a really good Robin costume. I was like, oh, it's cool. It's like all glittery and shiny.
Somebody just kept holding a mirror up to her, and she was startled by it.
And that was like she was like it was like these cuts in the music. They'd be like background noise.
I'm just saying she was shocked that she was. Oh, someone dressed me up as Robin. Oh my god!
But it was funny because I was handing out candy and I had a table set up in my front yard just like Robin. And she was in the nneighborhood. She lives in the neighborhood, so she came by and she was like pointing at me like, oh, we were both Robins, and I was the correct one because I had a much more.
Because you're bigger.
I was bigger. Yeah, I'm
Overweight.
overweight Robin. Tim Drake, as an adult, not doing so well.
Retired Robin.
But anyway, that was. Oh, one other banter thing. Not everyone's bought Relic Myers and Rhythms of Ruin. I don't know if you know that, but I haven't got a ton of reviews.
Man, you pull out that one early this time.
Get out of the way. As a funny anecdote, because I think this is humorous. People think it's self-deprecating. I think it's more funny. But I was talking to a book publicist because I was thinking about looking to get a book publicist, because usually if you have an agent or a publisher, does like a built-in publicist, But if you're an independent author, you have to like hire yourself, buy one yourself, and they're expensive. But I was talking to her, just getting a feel for like what I might need, and she was like, "Yeah, well, I mean, when you launch a book, you want to have like maybe 100 reviews at least, because if you have like 50 or so, those are just like friends and family. So people just assume as they're friends and family. And I had like 7. So it's like I feel like that Michael Scott joke where he's like, I couldn't even think of that many. Too far. I thought it was funny. But yeah, let's talk about campaign games.
What I've been doing this week, or.
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, I gave you an opportunity to punch in, and you didn't. So I thought.
What are we talking about? You were talking about
because I have a timer here, and I segment things off.
Oh,
but yeah,
well, it doesn't matter. I haven't been doing anything interesting anyway. Like,
tell me
I
about
all week. I bought a Udemy class on like studying up for big tech interviews, FANG interviews, and it just like goes over all these common algorithms and stuff that you need to get ready for or like prepare for, to like tackle some of the most common questions, like the leak code questions you get in interviews. So I spent like all week going through this, like 8 hours a day, just watching these videos and going through these tutorials and stuff and learning all this stuff. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever had to learn tons of stuff like in a short amount of time, but I learned a lot, but it's like I forget it all already. And my interview is I have an interview tomorrow. And so I'm nervous how it's going to go. But I spent all week prepping for that, and the cat keeps rubbing the microphone stand.
Yeah, do you hear that? It's like thump because he's like rubbed his mouth on it.
Yeah. I apologize if you hear like a microphone stand noise. The cat is just all over it for some reason.
Yeah, Loxley loves hanging out over next to. I rearranged my podcasting booth here, and I figured it might help decrease some of these background noises. But
so I actually have 2 interviews coming up. One tomorrow, one on Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday. So. When this drops, I'll have those done. So we'll see how those go. Maybe they'll be better than my last time.
So yeah, that's kind of the bookkeeping stuff of the what's going on this week.
But that on topic though, I also bought Dragon Age Veilguard.
I did too, and I was going to talk about that later during.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's kind of part of what inspired this episode, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, that was like the introduction for like the topic, the overall topic, which might be the bulk of this episode, but just talking about both RPGs, both on the tabletop and in the screen, role playing games.
Yeah, I will say I kind of lied. I didn't buy Dragon Age Veilguard. My wife bought it for me, just simply because she's obsessed with Dragon Age lately. She's been replaying all the old games like every day, and she was excited about this release. And I mentioned casually like, oh, maybe I should check it out. And then she just, I'll buy it for you. She wanted to buy it for me just to get me to play it.
I should have told her I wanted to check it out, and then she would.
She probably would have. As long as you let her talk to you about it, because she'll talk to you about it. So.
Yeah. So we keep coming back to like role playing games and campaign games, and I think that's kind of a standard thing because being on the creative side of tabletop games, we had this like love-hate relationship with campaign games because we grew up playing like Hero Quest, which was kind of had like a quasi campaign. I mean, it was a campaign.
It was a campaign.
Yeah,
but it was full on, man.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't like leveling up. You get more gear, but it wasn't like leveling up. You couldn't like increase your power level and stuff. The gear kind of compensated for that. But
yeah.
But I mean, that's getting into the nitty gritty. But anyway, like there's deeper campaign games, especially like nowadays with Gloomhaven and there's another big one out there.
Chess.
Chess is I was probably thinking of Iridia, but it's not out yet. That's the one I'm looking forward to. But it's like this thing where if it's a fantasy game or if it's like something that has a really heavy theme. It's like immediately people are like, oh, is it a campaign? And this is mostly on the tabletop because campaign games are kind of naturally, video games, a lot of those are just campaigns by default because you're progressing through a story, and every time you sit down and play through a session, you're playing like an ongoing story. But it's like, from the creator side, it's obnoxious because, again, this is from tabletop experience. You have to, it's reliant on the content, and then also just like the leveling up, and this typically goes into cooperative games where it's the AI, so you have to like compensate for like the enemy power levels for the player level, just make sure it's kind of balanced and challenging. So it's like a love-hate because, you know, as consumers we like them, but it's kind of obnoxious having to always take those into consideration when you're designing stuff. And it came up again recently because we're working on a game for the Malice of Light, the Keyguard Saga game.
I think people like the potential of working towards something. One of the biggest complaints I think of campaign games and like tabletop games is when people have game groups. First of all, they're locked into a specific game when there's like so many games to play. So it's like you kind of want to try other games. But if you're playing a campaign game, you have to play that one over and over again. And also, people just don't finish them. Like it requires commitment and people's schedules and all this stuff. So it's like it's kind of a luxury to be able to actually play through a full campaign. We have a group of guys. We have a couple guys we play skirmish games with. Like we started a Necromunda campaign, then we started a Frostgrave campaign. Never finish them. It's like we play a few times. It's all exciting and stuff, but like then it fizzles out because something else comes up. And like usually it's my fault because I suggest, let's try this other game,
which can be a good thing though, because like for like Necromunda, for example, I have a feeling that if we played through the campaign, the tail end might be a little dull or like less exciting. So even if it's like a few games, if you don't finish a campaign, it's like I still think that's valid. It's like
no, I still like them. Like I still it is still a selling point to me. Like for example, with Kill Team, like I was a little bummed that they didn't have Spec Ops, but knowing that it's probably going to be coming in the future is exciting. You know, it's like an exciting idea of having a campaign to play through, even if I don't actually play through it.
Yeah, and this is kind of like on the tail end of that. I mentioned before a few episodes ago when we were talking about zombie games, I kept bringing up County Road Z. And in that game, like it's a very well designed game, but if you're just playing like a one-off game of that, it's probably not going to feel very satisfying because the whole like the appeal of that game is the reason you're playing this game, like the meta aspect is like you got your characters here and they need some supplies to make this thing at their base run better or whatever it is. So it's this like kind of organic reason why you want to set this thing up and play this game, because if you didn't have that reason, it's like I probably wouldn't be compelled to set the stuff up and actually play the game. It takes time, and it's like it's
the same with like games like Frostgrave where it's a skirmish game, you're playing head to head, but there's treasure on the table, and like to win a game you have the most treasure, okay, I win, but you find treasure that you want to use in the next game. It's like I want to gather this stuff up to do better next time, have more things to use.
Yeah, and I think the other big aspect of I'm looking at tabletop games, campaign games, and role playing games. It's like people want that role playing game feel. There's like this appeal to role playing games, and it's weird because I have the same problem with that where, like, as a player, like it's really appealing to play an RPG. We've had several campaigns, but I feel like once you start them, I feel like it's a struggle to keep that momentum and like the excitement, and it's weird because it's still appealing, but I feel like every time we've played a role playing game campaign recently, it's almost like the thought of playing it is more fun than actually like getting into it and like progressing it. And it's probably a situation where some sessions might fall flat, so like it affects your excitement about playing the next game. But like I keep coming back to wanting to capture that feel of an RPG with less of the headaches, less of the scheduling, the prep work, all that stuff. And I think, coming up on technology nowadays, like we might be able to eliminate a lot of that with like AI stuff where you have like automated prep work and stuff like that, where it's like there's a fun aspect of putting the prep work in, but if you're just getting focused on playing, I think it's more appealing in that regard.
I think in role-playing games particularly, as like I've played them both ways as a player and as like a dungeon master, game master, whatever. Usually as a game master, it starts off very exciting because you have all these ideas you want to do and like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna like make my own story, and what end up like, oh, maybe I'll just fall back on a pre-written story because it's everything's there for me. But either way, it's like tons of homework, because if you're writing your own stuff, that's a lot of content to create, because you have to plan for every contingency of like what the players do. You have to have some random NPCs rolled ready to go if case they come up. But if you're doing like a published adventure, you have to read through that crap. You have to like prepare and read ahead and understand where the story's going, the characters involved. Like, if we're gonna run through this chapter, I have to read through the whole chapter and then see like, okay, well, which characters might come up in this one and how they're gonna react to things. What did the players do that already affected it, there's so much stuff to prepare for. So, I always am drawn to role playing games, but I feel like as like the older I get, the less inclined I am to play them because of that. Because like you can get a lot of that stuff from video games too nowadays, where especially games like Baldur's Gate 3 or whatever, that is basically just like playing D&D.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I always have that internal debate where it's like you have the freedom of improv and stuff with tabletop RPGs. There's a thrill there where it's like I've had several sessions. I remember playing Warhammer Fantasy Role Playing, having no prep and just like GMing that on the fly and having a lot of fun, and it was like a really compelling experience. But you have the opposite end where it's like you just feel like you're a deer in headlights and you're not prepped for something. And like a video game experience, it's like all that is set out for you, and you and your friends just play through it like that. There's like this thought that type of gaming is almost superior in video game format. But we might have the best of both worlds when you have that technology, like the D&D, what's it called? They
call it Project Sigil, but it's a tabletop,
Sigil.
Like the virtual tabletop.
Yeah, that might get there where it helps lower that barrier of prep work, but you still have like the video game visuals, but the freedom of like telling your own story.
Well, I would honestly I would be very excited to run a campaign when that comes out, mainly because I would just run it as like a dungeon crawl almost. Where like I would literally just make the story up as I go and have different ways to go to different locations and fight different kinds of monsters. I would just treat it like a dungeon crawl, and I think that'd be really cool. But again, one of the things that draws me into like D&D a lot is tactical combat and cool visuals. But like I said, I think I've mentioned that before in this podcast, where I can't just have like a mountain of miniatures and dungeon tiles and stuff to just always have something ready to go for a dungeon that I have to actually build out in the camp, like in the middle of the game. Let's stop the game. Let me set this up. It always drags out too long and stuff. I'd love to just have that in a virtual setting. Just basically have any kind of environment ready to go. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's like this. I almost think there's like subgenres of role playing games, and this is like a kind of a across the board of video games and tabletop, because you have the theater of the mind aspect, which is very obviously that's like the tabletop world, because in video games you only have so much control over the environment. You're like put into a world that's digitally created ahead of time, and you're interacting with things that already exist. But with tabletop, you have so much more freedom and with your imagination and everything. And there's been that rise in popularity of this. I'm not sure if you're as familiar with it as I am, Adam, but journaling solo role-playing games where people will just like literally take a notebook and they're writing. It's essentially just writing. Like it's a different way. It's a more interactive, gamified version of just writing short stories and stuff. But you have, like, for example, there's the I'm holding a book right now for Ironsworn, Starforged, which is a popular one. It's a completely solo co-op. You can play it with a GM if you want, but it's designed for solo and co-op, where you kind of improv and you rely on these oracle charts where you're rolling. It's like randomly generated content, but it's really well structured like a game. So you're pretty much like writing a story, but you're making choices as a player, and you're kind of like creating challenges for yourself. And it's honestly like, I was going to pitch this concept for this podcast. I was like, we should just like live play an RPG. Like we're just characters and we're like creating stuff on the fly. And then I document that, and then we release it as like books, like here's an ongoing adventure series that we're playing through, because people do that, and it's a popular genre nowadays. But it's funny because that's all like theater of the mind and story, and that's great. But I almost don't crave that when it comes to playing an RPG. Like for example, in a video game, I don't want all that story. So I think there's that kind of dichotomy where you do have the power to have really powerful stories in video games, but for some reason, someone like me, I don't go to play a role-playing game in a video game to experience a big sprawling story. I just want the game. I want to play the game. Yeah.
I'm that way especially with like video game role-playing games, where I I like story. Like I love watching movies and stuff like that. But I don't need the story like literally spelled out for me. Like I don't need to watch every single conversation and like I make all these choices. I like to just have some kind of a background about why I'm doing something in a video game, like what kind of adventure I'm going on. I just don't have that. I guess I don't have that desire to like improvise and be part of this grand narrative. It's like every time I play role playing games, funny things happen, stuff like that. But like you said, it feels kind of spontaneous, like sporadic. Like sometimes it's really good. Sometimes everybody at the table looks totally bored and out of it. It's like everybody has to be in the right mood, and everybody has to be like contributing to the the narrative. Otherwise, it kind of just drags on, and like people are just like, okay, well, let's just half-ass this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it falls back on how well the mechanics support the story and vice versa. But it's like, I mean, I like with story stuff, it's funny because like I'm kind of a broken record on this because I read a lot of books and I don't want to read when I'm playing a game. I don't want to like go through too much story. So I think like for me, theme is much stronger than story, like than actual narrative. And it's funny because I went through like a narrative design course for writing for video games because I found that to be an appealing possible career path, even though no one's really hiring for it anymore, it feels like. But it's like I while I want to contribute to that, as a consumer, I don't too much story. Just kind of I just skip through it.
I honestly feel like I can remember right now off the top of my head two of the most memorable like narrative like feelings of narrative I got from the tabletop experience. Actually, I have lots, but like two that stuck out just by talking was we were playing Shadows of Brimstone with our wives. And like we were just playing through a campaign, and I remember like specifically we were going to try to find some like kidnapped daughter or something, and like it turns out we found a portal to the lost space or what's that crashed spaceship, derelict ship, and like she got kidnapped by these aliens. She's being experimented on. We have to go rescue her and take her back to the sheriff or the mayor or whatever. And like that narrative just like kind of.
That's called emergent narrative.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But like that one was like, this is way better than I could have like written in an RPG, just like because random stuff just happened. And then also like Cthulhu Death May Die. We were playing that with Justin and Mitchell, I think it was when they were visiting. And like we were just playing these random characters with different like insanities, and like just the game effects would trigger like interesting situations where someone's a kleptomaniac and steals something from somebody, or they're what is the one where they're scared? Agoraphobia. They're scared of other people.
Yeah.
And like you just all kinds of funny situations pop up. Diamond Bar, California is calling me.
Take it. See what happens. Take it live on the air.
Welcome here on a Sunday evening. I don't know.
You're on the air. How can we help you?
And then what else? Oh yeah. Those are just examples of like tabletop games where there's not like specifically long paragraphs of narrative. It's just like card effects and stuff like that will just create situations where the players will just put it together and they're like, this is funny, this happened like this.
That's why
that's kind of narrative that I like.
Theme allows, like having a theme and setting allows for the emergent narrative, which I think is far superior in my opinion, because I love creating, like Street Masters. When we designed that, we designed a lot of modular aspects, and there is some story in there where people can play through a set story, but it's not meant that. It's meant to be consumed, where it's like you just throw stuff together and see what happens, and like you tell a story. And I've always had that desire. Like I want to document that. I want to like have emergent narratives captured on like whether it's like recordings or something, and then like write a story based on that, because a lot of those things would make really good. Like this is a bad example because I just thought of when you said Shadows of Brimstone. This is more of a comedic thing where the character I was playing as, I think it was the gambler, his miniature, he has like his gun on his hip, kind of relaxed, and he's like smoking a cigar, so he looks kind of like bored. But in the game I was shooting a corpse pile because it kept spawning more zombies, and like you have to actually destroy the corpse piles. So I just imagine this guy with his gun like held limply just shooting a pile of dead body
while all his companions are out there fighting zombies. He's just like, I'll take care of the pile of them.
He's just smoking a cigar, just popping caps in the corpse pile.
It was a little like one of those like one-shot pistols too. Was it a handbag gun or whatever?
Yeah, like I forget what they call those things in the game, but yeah, I think overall, like I always crave two different things with RPGs, like two different aspects, and I think the emergent. What's wrong?
Are you kicking your mic stand constantly? I keep hearing it banging.
It might be upstairs because Oliver might be jumping around. But it's that the improvisational thing with tabletop is where it excels, and with video games, I just like the progression. Like Diablo 4, for example, I just like getting a bunch of stuff, leveling up, getting more abilities.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Like in video games, like video role playing games, I like getting gear and stuff like that. But when we're playing D&D, I could care less about magic items you find. Like,
magic items are different, but I hate the minutia of like, oh, you killed this goblin. He has an iron dagger and 4 gold coins.
No, I know, but even like, oh, okay, I got a mace +1. This is more damage. I'll definitely take this. But like, it's not like World of Warcraft where you have like all these different like armor sets and like all kinds of different.
It's less tangible, but like there's an exception. I was playing D&D recently with some people from work. And my halfling ranger got some dagger of warning or something, and it had like ability where if we couldn't be snuck up on, so like I had to like role play that my knife had like a a radius that it could sell people. So like stuff like that's kind of interesting because it adds to the narrative. But yeah, if it's just like a +1 combat modifier or something, it's not that exciting. But yeah, that's I think like that covers a lot of our overall. What the heck is that? Did someone just fall down the stairs?
There was like a thing on the stairs, and must have just kicked it on the stairs.
Oh.
This also made me think about a game idea that we were talking about working on at some point, and maybe once I find a day job or whatever, and I have more free time, and maybe I want to do like a new design. We've always talked about this campaign driven zombie survival game. On a fixed board, like a city board that you just populate with different buildings for different scenarios, and it's just like a campaign game, but it's very old school, like the kind of zombie game we've always wanted, like State of Decay or something like that.
Like that Resident Evil Outbreak, the board game or something.
Yeah. And I think it'd be kind of cool if we decide to work on that project and we're doing this podcast, maybe we can actually like have design sessions and record them and like talk about the process of designing a campaign game, because there's a lot of things to consider. But also, the way that Kill Team does the NPOs in the joint operations is something that I want to do, where it's kind of model agnostic, but they just have these different types, and the types have the stats, and then you can have like different races that have special abilities. For example, I assume that they might do this in Kill Team. Like, for example, if they have a mission of orcs or whatever, orcs would have like this little special ability. They would use the marksman stats or whatever, but then they would have this special ability that makes them feel orky. And I think that's a cool way to do it.
Yeah, I like that's a little off topic, but I'm so curious how they're going to actually do that eventually. I want to see that.
Well, it should be on topic because we should talk about campaign stuff we would like to see in Kill Team, because it's not there currently, and it was in the last edition.
Yeah, the Spec Ops stuff. Which, I mean, we could either discuss that, or that could be another episode in itself, or we could talk about the video game side of things, because you mentioned being playing Dragon Age and
playing Dragon Age Veilguard right now.
Before I forget, we'll close off the tabletop thing, because I don't know if you like. I'd like to do a top 10 again, but 5 and 5 of our favorite tabletop role-playing games. We'll do the same thing with video games after talking about video games, but I'll start off because
specifically tabletop role-playing games, or just like campaign tabletop games.
Either like just like campaign-oriented tabletop experiences. Because for me, because this is off topic, you might take it, but on the art for this, I put the old Descent Road to Legend campaign expansion. That thing. One of my
I remember when that came out. Like, we never really played much. We played a little bit of it. We played a campaign like with Matt and Christy, I think.
It was complex, man.
But like just that whole, when that came out, like the possibilities felt like so exciting.
It was like, the scope was crazy.
There was like an overlord you picked, and you had like, that was the goal of the campaign.
That's yours, so you can go and talk about it.
That's not on mine. I just remember that one. That one was a pretty big deal because we played Descent a lot at that time, and that was like, oh my god, a campaign.
Yeah, why some of the ones I've already mentioned before, like County Road Z or Spec Ops, Kill Team stuff, like that might be on my list because I've talked about it so much. I'll just bring in some new stuff to the table. But I will mention again that Iron Sworn Starforged. I've only played like a couple sessions of this because I'm not because it's funny, as a writer, when I'm doing these like solo journaling RPGs, it just feels like a different way to do what I already know how to do. So it's like I'm kind of like retraining myself to do something that I've already done. I don't need the gamification side, even though I want to experience it, see what the appeal is, and I get it. But the Iron Sworn Starforge system is incredible. Like the books are so well produced, and it's got this like spiral bound like guide where the Oracle guides where you can like randomly populate planets and create these whole solar systems. Just if you want, you can make choices, but you can just randomize it all as well. But like I wanted to try to, I'm not a big sci-fi person. Like I want to be more knowledgeable in the sci-fi genre, but I've always been more fantasy and horror and everything. But I wanted to try playing a campaign of Ironsworn and document it and then like release it as like a novella. You know, if anybody wants to read my story, I'll just put it up online. You know, that'd be kind of a cool experience. But maybe someday I might do that. But I would recommend checking out Ironsworn Starforge. Very cool little product.
As far as tabletop campaign games, you mentioned this before, but I feel like this is like one of the first. This kind of opened the door to it way back in the day because we played board games all the time as kids. We played like 13 Dead and Drive and Clue and stuff like that, where we like this idea of like playing a character walking around like in places. But then when you got Hero Quest, that kind of like blew the doors open with like what was possible in tabletop games. And that game specifically, I don't think I even knew what a campaign was like before that game. Like that was like playing through a story, keeping your character. Because I think we played something else where like you it was like a fantasy game where you collected things, but then that was the end of the game. But then we're like, in Hero Quest, you actually get to keep it for the next adventure.
Yeah. I can't remember what that was. I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of it.
And this, I'll group in other things with this. Like it evolved into Warhammer Quest, and then like Shadows of Brimstone. All those things I feel like are the same kind of experience, where it's like this dungeon crawl game that has a campaign built in, where your character gets more powerful and find more stuff. That's a very popular type of game. I feel like everybody still likes it.
It's the board game RPG hybrid everyone's been chasing after, like Gloomhaven.
Honestly, like I always fall back to like wanting to get back into it. Like Shadows of Brimstone is a good example. I bought all that stuff again, but it always falls back into this challenge of all the stuff you need to play. Like with Shadows of Brimstone, you need to have like all these card decks. I had to buy this special card deck holder just to play it, and like all these different kinds of miniatures and all these different Tupperware containers I have of miniatures. And like when we're playing the game, it's like, oh, we drew a card for zombies. Go find my zombies. No. Go find the cultists. And it just takes so long to play through. It's fun, but like it is a big hurdle. And
you imagine a game like that where it's like Hero Quest. I'm pitching a game for somebody to make right now, so take your notes down. But like imagine a game like a boxed game like Hero Quest where all the components were fixed. So it's like the treasure deck is like tokens. Like you draw a card and it's like, oh, you found a treasure. But whatever character you're playing, you have your own personalized treasure deck. So that card tells you to draw a card over here. So you're not bloating this like component thing. You have these modular aspects where like if I have the Ranger box, but
you're always seeing the same stuff as the Ranger then, right?
Yeah, but if that deck, but you won't find a ton of treasure. You just shuffle it up. But like everything you find is geared towards your character.
Enemies? What about them? That's a whole other thing then, right? Like all the different enemies.
Whatever boss you have has his own like troops. You have some generic ones in the box. It's like Death May Die. You have those, cultists who are always there.
Now, that's one thing I would like. Like Shadows of Brimstone, for example, I would like the game to be like, you can theme it if you just put the work into it. But I would like to, we're playing a dungeon right now. We're playing an adventure, and this is an orc adventure. So get my orc miniatures out. The orc. This is all you need, and you play through it. Because honestly, if you're playing a campaign, I don't need to see like a smorgasbord. What do you call that? Like a menagerie of monsters in every single dungeon. Yeah, it's like if you're playing an adventure for like a couple hours, it can be the same kind of monsters because it's thematic too. So that's one thing I think that would be make the game better.
Yeah, modularity is where it's at. I'm gonna say something I'm delving back into recently. I've always been a big card game fan, but recently with Halloween and everything, watching all the horror movies and just writing horror books, and I got back into the Arkham Horror LCG, which is just a great card game. I have these issues with it where like I don't love how it's trying to be a board game where like you put these location cards out and you're moving a pawn around to like explore locations. I like the thought of that, but when I'm playing a card game, I want much more abstraction where I'm just playing cards. Like, the Lord of the Rings card game was a great example. I just loved how it was decks of cards. But all that being said, the Arkham LCG is just like so thematic and so deep, and like even though I don't love reading through blocks of narrative text. Like it's just so compelling how the campaigns are built. And the app that somebody made, I wish I knew who made this app, because it is insane. If anybody's ever tried the Arkham Horror LCG and felt like inundated with stuff they had to track, by pen and paper or whatever it is, or like keeping all those like campaign logs, you had like the, what do you call them, the campaign guides you have to use to build scenarios. Somebody built this app which is tied to the ArkhamDB website, the Arkham database, where all the cards are stored electronically and you can build decks online. But your account for ArkhamDB is on this app called Arkham Cards. And everything that's ever been released is digitized in this, where there's a library of cards you can sort through, build your own decks, track them. When you play campaigns, this app presents you with the campaign log. It tracks any choices you make. You can even use it to do the token draws, like the randomization when you're doing skill tests, because it tracks your token bag. I still prefer to do that physically, so I still build mine physically because I have like these custom coins I use, which feel really cool to draw them out of the bag. That way I can cheat easier. If I draw the token I don't like, I can put it back in and draw again, because I always cheat when I play. But anyway, this game is great, but if it wasn't for the app, I probably wouldn't play it. Like, the app makes it like phenomenal. It's a great experience. And as much as I don't want to say, I want all that story, because it's there and it's presented so well, it's just like, it's part of the package. I love it. So it's a great game.
This one seems kind of lame because it's such an easy one, but I feel like I've talked about like the big ones, and that's D&D. It's like, not only is D&D still a very popular role playing system, and it's very accessible and very easy to get into, but also it's easy to understand. Anybody can play it. But it's also just, it can adapt to anything. And it has, like, there's all kinds of different, source books of different settings, stuff like that. And every edition, like, I guess fourth is probably a little more controversial, but every edition seems to get better and more streamlined and stuff like that. And the newest edition is that way. Like, this was actually the first edition that ever has how to play the game right in the front of the book. Like, you open the book and start reading it, and like the first chapter is, here's how you actually play D&D.
I like that.
That's like never been done before. Usually it just goes straight into character creation. So D&D, it's inspired, and it's touched all kinds of aspects of role playing and campaign games and tabletop. So it's kind of got to be on the list. So
yeah,
and also it's also direct opposite of my next one in regards of like how you campaign. Like, you just keep it even more powerful. Like, your character just gets more and more magic items. You basically just build up to godhood. That's kind of like the whole feel of the game is start as a nobody, become a god. So.
I think my third one I'm going to mention is weird because I haven't actually played it yet. I feel like I know how it plays. I just haven't sat down and got a group together. But the Root RPG, the Root role-playing game, which is made by Magpie Games. Honestly, to be like transparent, I only got this because the book was a really cool size. I love digest books. Like, it's a really small, compact book.
So it's good.
So it's going to have good content. But it turned out that I've read through all the books I've gotten, and I actually backed the expansion they're doing. I really am going to... I'm planning on doing a cooperative campaign of this with my daughter, and I'll just like GM for us, with some published stuff with just making randomization charts, like that Oracle stuff that Ironsworn does. But it's a really cool system because it's unique in how it presents your characters. Like, you don't really choose a class. You choose a playbook, and the playbook is like a class, but it kind of guides your gear, your choices, and it's all based on moves, which I think is that system. It's a version of that Apocalypse system. I forget the name of it. It might have been just called the Apocalypse. I don't know, but there's a lot of games kind of like, I think the Ironsworn is a version of that as well. But yeah, really, I love the board game Root. It's one of my guilty pleasures because I usually play it solo. I don't get a lot of competitive games in, but it's a cool little game, and the RPG is something I want to do someday.
My next one is another role-playing game, and it's kind of like the opposite of D&D. It's a Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's very gritty. I love the Warhammer fantasy setting. But in the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay game, you basically play as like you're building up to what D&D players start as. Like you're kind of starting off as like a nobody, like a farmer. I think there's a rat catcher. You're a merchant. There's basically all these different careers in the game. I think there's like 20, maybe like 50. I don't know. There's tons of careers to pick from. The newest edition is fantastic, by the way, by Cubicle 7. But yeah, it's a very gritty, very brutal game. We played a campaign recently. I think it was the most recent campaign we played, but it was really fun. But in that game, you're basically just trying to survive in this horrible setting, and you get all kinds of weird diseases and insanities and stuff. And if you're lucky, you survive long enough to become like what a D&D hero would start as, like a hero. But yeah, it's a very, very cool system, and it's holds a special place in my heart. So.
I'm gonna do a deep cut. It's not the most popular game. It's a little newer than some of the other ones we talked about, but there was a small little box card game I got called Legends Untold, and I forget the designer's name. Cool guys who designed it, but the game itself is a very, very abstracted dungeon crawl, and they're doing a new expansion, a new like version of it, updating it essentially. But it's just like it's a dungeon crawl where you have cards for all the different rooms. You're building a map as you go, but it has a light mechanic where you're like, you have to light the room. The reason it's the campaign side is really cool. It's kind of like Warhammer Quest or Warhammer Fantasy Role Playing, a way where you're playing as like a kind of like a farmer. A farmer. I was thinking of the word Moor, M-O-O-R, because I think like there's the Moor in that game. But anyway, like a farmer, an aristocrat, a hunter, like really kind of low level things. And
a hunter,
mentor, aristocator. But yeah, it's a very simplistic like D6 system, dice pool system. But it's the way it's presented. I mean, you played it before. You might not remember all the mechanics, but it was kind of an old school, dungeon crawl game in card format. It's pretty cool though.
My next one is actually kind of it was the beginning of a new type of game that kind of became more popular, and also it's influenced games of all types now. But it was Pandemic Legacy when that game came out, because legacy games were kind of a new thing at that point. And
that was only the second big one, I think, really, because the Risk Legacy came out. Yeah. I think that was the next big one. But
yeah, and legacy games are for those who don't know, they're like board games that have like sealed up content, like in envelopes and stuff, and you only open them when the game tells you to. And Pandemic Legacy, as you play games of trying to fight off these diseases, the world would change, and like you would unlock new characters, but you'd also destroy some cards. Like you would rip up a card and throw it away and you don't use it anymore. Or you would draw something on a card. So, put stickers on cards. The game would just change. And by the time the game was done, it was like your own personal experience, which was kind of controversial.
Because Pandemic has like diseases, but this you'd actually name the disease. And like it just kind of like all the mechanics going forward would be based on like whatever you name that disease.
But there were some crazy things that happened in Pandemic Legacy. I don't know if we should even talk about spoilers or not.
Yeah, I think the statute of limitations is gone, but like we don't have to get it. But if you haven't played it, go get it. It's like one of the coolest experiences. It's like we couldn't stop playing when we had the.
Yeah, I think we played it in a week or something like that, because it's
back-to-back games. And
but it was a game changer. And nowadays, like, you see lots of games out there that do that. Like even like Warhammer games, like when Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress came out, there was like some sealed content. You wait till you open it,
which is like there's a whole discussion to be had.
I think we did that in Ultra Quest too.
Yeah, but there's a whole discussion about like what's legacy, because like legacy was like defacing the game essentially and changing it. But like when you have campaign things that just unlock elements in the game, like it's less. There should be a different word for that, I think.
Yeah,
like unlock.
Well, but it was inspired. They inspired that, and obviously Pandemic Legacy was kind of controversial because lots of board gamers are very particular about their games. They want them to last forever. And Pandemic Legacy is designed to be consumed.
Yeah, one of the best parts of that though was like the rule book would have blank boxes for rules, and you wouldn't know till later. You get a sticker, and you put the sticker in the rule book, and now you have a new rule for the setup.
Yeah, that Zombie Kids game.
What was it called? That was great. Yeah,
Zombie Teens.
Yeah. It's a Zombie Kids system. I don't know if they changed the name.
I think it was Zombie Teens. I think, but anyway, it was a really cool version of that.
Zombie Teens. Yeah, that's a great game. I Riley never wanted to finish it.
Amelia did, but I haven't finished it. So.
It's kind of cheap, but my last one was going to be different. But because you mentioned that, I feel like I have to add this on there as well. Betrayal Legacy was even better. Like Betrayal at the House on the Hill, great game.
I don't think I played. I think I played like one game of that.
You never played that, no. Like Riley, and Sarah played it, but Riley and Sarah kept getting into fights because they don't play games well together.
Yeah.
But so I didn't get to finish it, and I'd like to like do a new copy of it and play through it because it's like really cool. It's a lot like Pandemic Legacy, but you're just playing as. It's cool because in that game, if you haven't played Betrayal, like you're starting off as a group of investigators and someone becomes the bad guy. So to make that work in this cooperative game, it's fully cooperative, but it still has the possibility of traitors. So you play as generations. So whoever survives the game, their character is like, wow, someone's yelling. Their character's like a member of the next family, the next generation of family. So you just kind of make your own family tree. Essentially, it's really cool experience. What's your fifth?
So my fifth is actually a weird one because it's something that I don't have yet, but it's one that I'm most excited about, campaign-wise, I think, and that was that Iridia game that I backed on Kickstarter. This is kind of like along the lines of Gloomhaven, sort of, where there's a big box of like all kinds of sealed content.
Bigger than Gloomhaven.
But this game is more like traditional fantasy, which I like, and it's like I like everything about it. It's like you make your own character. He even has like the game has different classes you play as, so there's different miniatures for each class, but there's also different heads that you can put into your miniature for whatever race you are. And luckily, in the campaign, they also unlocked small bodies for like the dwarves and halflings.
I was so glad they did that because they weren't even thinking about it. They said, "It's like, how would you have?"
It had to be an add-on. It was just too expensive. But the game looks like I was watching the most recent update on the Kickstarter of like the packaging and stuff. The game looks extremely well produced. The storage looks fantastic, but there's like sealed tiles. All the stuff is things you unlock as you go. So you're literally exploring this world in his setting, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm looking forward to actually talking about it on this podcast, assuming we get it.
Yeah, that'll be episode 15 or something, so we'll start spacing them out like months in advance.
I think that one's set to deliver anywhere from like this into this year or January or something.
That'd be nice if it was, that's our tabletop stuff. We only have like 10 minutes left for video game stuff, so we can just like kind of talk about our thoughts on. We've both been playing Dragon Age. You've been playing a lot more than me, but
yeah, Dragon Age Veilguard. I was pretty impressed with it. I really like the combat in the game. I haven't played a Dragon Age game since Origins, I think was the last time I played it, and that was a long time ago. So I'm not familiar with the setting. My wife is very familiar with the setting, but I've told her that I wasn't interested in hearing the details until I played through this because I kind of want to go into it fresh. But the game, I guess it's sold really well. It's got good reviews, but I guess there's like some backlash about it being woke or something, which is ridiculous because the game always has been
diverse.
Yeah, well, I mean the game's always had like same-sex relationships and the same whatever, but like doesn't matter.
Get over it, guys.
Yeah, regardless of all that crap, the game I've enjoyed it so far. There are things that I'm not a fan of, which is the setting. Like it's very fantastical.
Yeah, it does seem very like it's not like, I mean, it's sort of high fantasy, but there's another word for that where it's like kind of mythic fantasy.
Yeah, it's like floating islands and stuff. I would want to play. I was really hoping to get a fantasy game where it's like, oh, you're in a little village and you're going to an inn and you're going to a tavern, get a quest, and go out in the woods and fight some goblins or something. I just wanted really traditional fantasy.
It's like the Malice of Light video game is what I want.
But I just never get old. I never get tired of the good old fantasy stuff. So I always want that. But Dragon Age Dragon Age Veilguard has a really interesting combat system where you can like it's action combat, but you can actually like, pause the combat for a second to like assign abilities that your companions will do. But it's very fluid. And also it feels a little bit like Space Marine. Like it has like the block mechanic, and if you block you can do parries and stuff, and there's lots of cool features about the combat. I really enjoy the combat, and I really wish that someone would make a game like that's like an online role-playing game, like an MMO or something, because it's really fun, but I want to play multiplayer, and I want to play it with less conversation. I just want to have the adventuring and fighting.
I get the appeal of people who want to have relationships and converse, and there's a...
Oh, go on.
I was going to say, like, there's an appeal to that. Like, I've played games that are more like kind of virtual, like visual novels, where it's like you're just managing relationships. So I get the appeal, but I kind of don't want both. If I want that, I'd go play that. I'd rather, if I'm playing an action RPG, I just want to play the combat and get my upgrades and just do the game. Like I want more concise sessions. So, and I've only played a little bit. It seems pretty cool. I think the movement's a little sluggish. It feels like you're kind of muddy.
The
but
camera is slow. Like I haven't messed with it yet, but I feel like the camera should be sped up a little bit. But one thing I do like about the gear in the game, this is a cool way to do it where you don't really have like inventory space. You can just have as much gear as you want. But when you find gear, like say for example, you find like this leather armor, and if you find the exact same thing, like I found this leather armor again, you don't just get another copy of it. You actually like upgrade the armor you have. So you basically get like a uncommon version of it, and then a rare version of it, which I think is really cool. It's like a way where you don't have this like repeat stuff. So that's a cool way to handle gear, I think.
Yeah, it seems like a cool game. I just haven't dug too much into it, and I know people love Mass Effect. I never played much Mass Effect either. So
also one thing that bugs me about it is there's 4 races to choose from, which is better than 2 or whatever. But like I wish there were a bit more races but also classes. There's 3 classes to choose, and I get really sick of these fantasy games that have warrior, rogue, mage as like the classes. Like it's like the default trio.
If you're trying to minimize, it is a good way to go if you want to minimize the number of classes. But I just like it's either like don't have any classes or have enough that you're going to satisfy the archetypes that people want.
Yeah, just like Skyrim did that too, where it's like strength, finesse, and intelligence. It's fine, like it's a classic, but I like a little bit more diversity, especially like with the classes have like subclasses, but they don't feel different enough. Like for example, the warrior just has like guardian or berserker or whatever. It should be like Templar, Dark Knight or something.
I don't like how the rogue has saboteur, and the saboteur is like somebody who uses like guns and stuff. Like he like pulls out like a rocket launcher or something, and I haven't got that far.
Yeah, the warrior is like shooting, like throwing fire blades and like throwing a magic shield. So it's not really like it's you have all kinds of different magic powers no matter what class you're playing as.
Which is fine. I just prefer more grounded. Like I'm looking forward to that Project Baxter or whatever it is from that Starbreeze Studios who does Payday.
Yes. I would love if this. I love Baldur's Gate 3, but I would have loved Baldur's Gate 3 even more if it played like this game, combat-wise. Like, I love the action combat. It's just really fun. The little nitpicking thing I'm doing about the setting is minor complaints because the game itself is fun to play, which is, what you want in a video game. So
this is going to be an improv-ish thing, but I want to do like a top 10 of like video game RPGs because I don't have a ton, I don't think. I have some classics.
You mean the top 5 and 5?
Yeah, it's 5 and 5. Yes, because we only have like less than 10 minutes left. But
we're not on a timer, dude.
Well, I know, but it's a good gauge. It's a good way to gauge a full episode.
Yeah, I can start if you want. I was gonna say like River City Ransom because that was like one of the first like role playing games I think we played.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it's a role playing enough. So
yeah, it is. I mean, it's got everything in it.
I know, but I'm gonna go with Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 6, which was 3 in Asia,
3 US.
No. Yes, sorry. It was 3 in US, but it was the 6th one like in other.
Which is crazy. I think that was the one that came before Final Fantasy 7 because 7 was so iconic.
Yeah.
But
Final Fantasy 3, not only was Final Fantasy 3 like really memorable for me because we got a Super Nintendo late in life because we got one.
I think we got on the tail end. We got the tail right on the tail end of that generation
because we had a Genesis for a long time, and then there were so many games. I think Harvest Moon was the game that we had to get a Super Nintendo for.
Yeah.
But part of that is I went to CD Land, the store that sells all the used video games, and I found a copy of Final Fantasy 3, which was like really hard to find. I remember after school, like we take the bus to school, and it was across the street at that like shopping center, and I like ran after school, and I was like, tell the bus driver I have to leave, and so I ran over to the store to buy it, like busting my ass, and I ran all the way back, and I managed to get back before the bus took off.
No, I remember it was like a movie because like I remember the bus was like into gear, and I'm like, wait.
I couldn't believe I actually made it. That was such a weird thing to do because if I would have missed the bus, I'd be like, Mom.
I know, like internally I was like, because I was kind of shy as a high schooler, so like I didn't want to be like loud and say, hey, wait. So I was literally going to let him leave, but then I saw you running. I'm like, hey, I think somebody's missing the bus. So like I had to kind of like subtly tell him to wait, but I was going to let you just get left behind.
So the weird thing about this game was that as I was playing it, this is before the internet. Like I didn't know anything about it besides reading a few things in like a magazine or something. But I was playing it, and I usually like to pick a favorite character when I'm playing these games. And early in the game, I met this king guy of Figaro. I don't know what they call it.
I think it was Fajaro, yeah.
But Edgar was this guy. He's like got this blue armor and like, you know, blonde guy. I was like, oh, cool. There's a guy I like this guy. He's cool. And I don't know. And also the game was multiplayer. Like you could play 2-player, which is pretty cool.
Which was the only game in that whole series that did that, which is crazy.
Yeah,
like
I think other games in Asia did it too, but
I think I was the only one. I remember reading about it, and it was like,
okay. Well, the weird thing was that in the story, that guy's got a twin brother, and Saban, and that's who Brady ended up liking. So, like, you know, the game I just happened to really get into happened to have main characters that were twins, which was pretty cool. But yeah, that game was very, very iconic for me. In the
it's funny too because it was very utilitarian might be the word. Where I mean, it was useful because you didn't want to memorize all of his combos because he had all
stupid
those like
blitz abilities.
Yeah, he had those blitz combos, and I was really good at them, so it worked out.
I just remember Edgar's stupid tools where he had like a drill with a construction hat,
that auto crossbow that shot like 1,000,000 crossbow bolts. I think you mentioned it, so I'm going to go ahead and take the run of it. One of my most memorable RPGs, which is kind of a weird RPG, was Harvest Moon, but not the original, because we played the original a lot. But when Harvest Moon 64 came out, that thing consumed so much of my life. Like it was an isometric, like, you know, remember how weird the maps were? Because like there was like an abyss outside, because it was like
it was floating maps.
Yeah, floating map. But for some reason that game just really hooks into me. I just loved the graphics. I loved all the characters in the world. But for anybody, I mean, I'm sure now with Stardew Valley, everyone knows what farming sim RPGs are. But Harvest Moon was the creator. That was like the first one of its kind. And I think Harvest Moon 64 was like the third or fourth game in the line. I had played the Game Boy Color one. And fun fact, the SNES was the first one. It was a great, classic game. They made one for Game Boy Color, and I was stoked. I loved portable gaming. When I got it, though, I was so depressed when I played it because they cut out the village. They turned the village into a menu. So if you left your farm, you went to a sub-menu, and it just like you would pick what building you're going to. So you had like you couldn't talk to anybody. There was like no relationship. It was so dumb. I was so disappointed. But anyway, when Harvest Moon 64 came out, that game was just phenomenal. It was like set the bar so high.
Does Stardew Valley kind of rank up there with that then?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, it's weird because like you do have progression because you're unlocking new tools. You know, you unlock things, so it has like that Zelda style RPG, but it's not like traditional RPG stuff.
Stardew Valley is a fantastic game, by the way, if you haven't played it.
Yeah. That's my first one I'm going to mention.
The next one for me is kind of going off the tail end of Final Fantasy 3. It was another game that I got for Super Nintendo, which was blew my mind. Was Secret of Mana, however you want to pronounce it. This was like more of an action RPG where like when you got into a combat, it was like this little arena of like running around fighting with, you know, real time combat. But again, this was a 3-player game, which was crazy. So like I'd play with my buddies, but I liked the game because every character had like a specific type of weapon. And like, and they could switch their weapon out, but like, you know, this guy used swords. This guy used what was it, like a whip or something?
Yeah, there was I think a whip or a pole. It's been a while, but yeah. But I think the Seiken Densetsu 3 was the one that really.
That's available, by the way, on Switch, which I didn't buy. I was going to buy that, but
that one had the cool cast of characters. One of like the werewolf guy. And
so yeah, Secret of Mana, that was a great game. And a funny story was there was an interview going around with was it James McAvoy? And he got asked what his favorite game was, and he just had Secret of Mana. I was like, that's such a random thing. It's like, that's his favorite game of all time.
Yeah, I think another like really weird deep cut I think I need to mention, because it is kind of a quirky RPG. It felt like an RPG, was Cowboy Kid for Nintendo.
RPG has like different weapons you can get.
Yeah, like, well, it had like this kind of like open-ended story, because you picked who you wanted to go after, right? Like, so it had like this. It had a lot of RPG elements, because it had a town you went to and talked to people, and you would like upgrade your weapons.
I don't even remember how. Like, we rented that game, but I don't even remember how we picked that one out, because it didn't seem like something we would gravitate towards.
The cover didn't really sell what the game was, and to explain what it is, it's like, kind of like a side-scrolling game. It's kind of like River City Ransom, but one person is this blue color-themed cowboy, the sheriff guy. The other guy is a red Native American, which is like this guy with red pants and a tomahawk, and he can throw boomerangs and stuff. And so, like, you know, questionable content nowadays, maybe, but like at the time, it was like the whole, you know, cowboys and Native Americans.
I think the cowboy guy could get. You start with a pistol, or no, you start with knives. You both start with knives.
Oh yeah, yep.
And he could get a pistol.
That's what I liked. Yeah.
And then you can get a pistol, and then I got like a rifle, I think, or shotgun or something.
Shotgun.
Yeah.
Because like the Native American kid got a tomahawk, I think a bow, and then a boomerang. But yeah, it was a very bizarre game. But like we like our eyes got bloodshot playing that when we rented it from
Yeah, I
Video
remember
Land.
we woke up one Saturday morning and played it like really close to TV, and we were just sitting there, just locked onto it, trying to beat it one morning. And our mom got really upset. It's like, get away from the TV! Your eyes are gonna bleed out.
What's your third one?
I've realized a trend here. I think all of mine are multiplayer role playing games, which I guess says a lot about what I want. But
That's
this
what
one
multiplayer. That's what RPG should be.
This
right?
one's actually. I've realized I'm kind of going through like a timeline of my life in video games. But this one was Neverwinter Nights. This was basically like a D&D sandbox. It was one of the first big, like, there were D&D games before, but this one was the first big 3D Dungeons and Dragons game. And you could basically, and it was a multiplayer D&D game. It was really awesome. Like, you could pause combat, and it was you could point and click, but like you could pause combat and be more tactical. But you could also like just create. You could have a dungeon master running the game for you with custom content. You could also just make your own campaigns. Like I actually scripted my own little encounter of like, it was like going to this tavern and they want you to kill some rats in the basement. But it was a huge toolbox, and I can't believe it's not a thing right now. Like with technology and like Unreal Engine stuff like that. Why can't Baldur's Gate 3 be like this? But anyway,
Neverwinter Nights had like the problem. I mean, you always wanted to play it, and I played it sometimes. And like a funny story, I probably would never have met my wife if it wasn't for that game, because I was sitting in class.
You're welcome.
She was constantly playing that on her laptop. And I'm like, is she playing D&D? And like, it's funny because I don't even think she really knew it was D&D. She just liked playing RPG. But it's when you played it, I always hated it because both the gnomes and the halflings had like gorilla arms. Like,
Yeah,
they didn't resize the arms.
The models were so weird in that game. But that game was back. That was when I started like getting into PC gaming, because I did most of console gaming until my like early 20s, I think, and I started building my own computers and stuff. But that game, I spent so much time. I had a friend and his wife who lived in Georgia or something. But they always wanted to play Neverwinter Nights with me, so we played that until the sequel came out, and played so much of it. So,
my third one, like, this is 3, right? You just did your third one.
Yeah, I think so.
This is weird because I feel like this should be an RPG, but I was gonna say, I was thinking about Simon's Quest, Castlevania 3 or Castlevania 2. It was 3, right? Yeah, whatever it was. But at the same time, if that's an RPG, I think Blaster Master is an RPG because it has this open-ended nature. You're getting upgrades. So I think, like, even though I wanted to mention, I think the main difference being with like Simon's Quest is you have like villages and you talk to people, which is a minor
there's
difference.
no people. It really
It's a minor difference, but I mean, in the Blaster Master Zero, there's a little bit of that. Because
I think modern games almost all have like role playing elements.
Yeah. So I'll go with I wanted to throw out because Blaster Master is one of the most impactful games of my life, but I will say Simon's Quest because that one was what I was thinking of, because it was like it took the classic platformer that Castlevania was, but it tried to make it an RPG where you had like an inventory. You went to go to villages and talk to people, and had this weird like day-night thing that was really cool for the time because they didn't have a lot of that. Nowadays, it's a lot more common, but at like nighttime, you'd go out and like it'd be a lot more dangerous to travel and stuff. So pretty cool little game though.
Yeah,
that was for NES. I think I just. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought my headphones cut out, but
the next one for me is again following the timeline of my video gaming career, and that is World of Warcraft. This game took up so much of my time in my early 20s. I think it was my early 20s when it came out. I built a PC to play EverQuest 2. When that came out, I wanted to build a PC to run that because it was like a really demanding game at the time, and I played a bit of that game. And I really liked it, but I didn't have anybody really that I knew that played it. But then my friend Mitchell, he was playing World of Warcraft, and I didn't really. It seemed all kind of cartoony for me when I compared it to EverQuest. I was like, "Well, how are you playing this?" But then I finally got around to actually trying it. I made a priest, and I was running around Elwyn Forest fighting some kobolds or whatever. And I'm like, "Oh my god, this game is amazing!" So I just got like hooked on that. And I ended up losing like 40 pounds because I would never eat dinner and I was on Slim Fast.
The old World of Warcraft diet.
I worked at a health club, and I was like overweight at the time, and the people that came in, the older people, like asking me, what are you doing to work out? Are you doing like, this class? Sort of like, no, I'm just playing World of Warcraft and I'm not eating dinner. But yeah, that game is still going strong. I don't play it anymore because of the subscription aspect. I just don't really feel like paying a subscription these days to play a game. But if it comes to Xbox, I will get back on that train, I think.
Yeah, all I gotta do is put it on Game Pass. Even if they make a premier like membership tier of Game Pass, I would pay it just to play it on console. So, I think for my number 4, I think I have to kind of go with the mainstream one, just because it was pretty impactful. Which is, it's not Skyrim, it's not Morrowind, it was Oblivion. Because Morrowind was pretty impactful when it came out. I played a lot of Morrowind, and obviously Skyrim is great. But for some reason, Oblivion, just that setting in the kind of the Imperial area, I loved like the sweeping castle landscapes and stuff, and I just played a lot of that game. I didn't love the other dimension stuff, like going to Oblivion or whatever it was. I didn't love those
Daedric
parts.
places.
Yeah, the Daedric places. I mean, it was cool because it was different, but I just loved the kind of the old-fashioned medieval setting.
You should play Elder Scrolls Online.
We have. It just doesn't really do it for me for some reason. I wish it did.
I like that game. Was that it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows Elder Scrolls, so nothing really else to say. But yeah, it was a really cool, impactful game.
My next one is the most recent, probably one of the best, most recent role-playing games I played, and that would be Baldur's Gate 3. Brady did play Baldur's Gate 2 a lot when we were younger. I didn't play too much of it, but I watched him play it. But Baldur's Gate 3 was pretty dang awesome. Like that game was it's probably as close to D&D in the video game form as I've played so far. I think my only complaint with that game is that the combat's so fun and the system is so good, but they don't just have like a dungeon crawl mode. Like I would play that I would play that right now to this day. I'd play it every single day if there was a random dungeon crawl mode where you just see how far you can go. Like that would be so cool, because I don't want to play the same story again. I've already played it like 3 times.
Just make sure Project Baxter's on point and we'll be fine.
Yeah, I really like the system of that game, and I wish, since they're not going to make more content for it, I wish they would give it to some other studio and say, hey, make some more campaigns, because the game needs campaigns.
With how impactful that game was, like how culturally relevant it is, it's crazy to me that it's not, being done like to death right now.
Yeah, I think I heard Wizards of the Coast was trying to find the next person to make the next Baldur's Gate game. Obviously, the studio that made Baldur's Gate 3 is a good studio. They're off doing their next project now, so they're not going to do it. But it'd be cool if I would like more D&D video games, especially like a live service one, like action RPG version,
like Project Baxter.
Yeah, but also like Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance.
Yeah.
I should have put that on there. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2 was such a good game.
Special mention.
Yeah.
Or honorable mention.
I like action RPGs.
I think my last one is another bizarre deep cut, but it really had a huge impact on me. Was a game I don't think anybody's ever heard of it except for Corey Kineska, my buddy. Survival Kids for Game Boy Color.
But the island one?
Yeah, Island Survival. It was very much like Harvest Moon or Pokemon, but like you were just playing as a kid with nothing except for a survival knife on this desert island, and you're like going around exploring, unlocking new areas, upgrading gear, crafting gear. It had like a really cool like crafting system, and I tried playing it recently with some emulators, and it's like it doesn't hold up obviously, but at the time when it came out, I was mesmerized by it. It was so cool, such a cool little game, and I've always loved the whole island survival aspect. So that's our video games, our top 10 video games. It's over an hour, so
we do have a couple questions we didn't get.
Yeah, let's do those, and before we do our what we've been watching stuff.
Let me pull them up real quick here. Listener questions. All right, so we mentioned a few episodes ago about reworking Alter Quest into a Malice of Light skin. Is there anything else you would want to change about it? I think Adam mentioned how the card layout was an issue and how it became a table hog. Yes. Alter Quest, there were lots of things I'd like to change about it. I think
just play Hour of Need and you'll see what we do.
Yeah, honestly, like the reason why I did that big single board thing was like a throwback to Hero Quest, because I like the idea of just having a board game. You just pull out a board and play a game. But for Hero Quest is available now, so like that's out there. I don't think we would try to do that again. We would probably just do
what the campaign added. It had that encounter mode. It'd be like a mix of that, because the encounter mode was like Street Masters, where you had like a little fixed board. But it's just like what we always talk about, our ideal game. especially with dungeon crawling, and we might do this. We might get around to actually doing this someday. We would just like to have a game that has some narrative stuff because people love narratives, and I'm all about writing stuff, so I'll provide that. But having cool, compelling campaign narrative, but when you're playing the game, it's just a modular, set up a small footprint on the table and playing an encounter. Because to us, while dungeon crawling is a cool like theme, the act of like sprawling a dungeon out on a table does very little. It's like you're never going to backtrack, you're never going to go back exploring where you came, so just extract that.
I think the element I've always appealed to me for dungeon crawling was to see what's behind the door. It's like, see what's here. Exploring is fun, but I don't think the exploring is worth the time and the components needed to do that.
It could be a deck of cards. You just
there's other ways to do that, but I do think with Altar Quest, the whole meat of the game was card play, and we just kind of drug it out over this giant board, and so the game was all about movement. It became like kind of like Brook City, where it's just about movement. That's the most important thing. So I think we would change it to be more encounter based, and I think that's probably the biggest. Also, the card areas, like the card play areas, were just too big. Like there's all these cards to upkeep and stuff like that. So we would streamline a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
so,
the whole threat area thing, I don't think needs to be there. Like you don't even have to have a card for each enemy. Like there's all kinds of changes we would make, but it'd all be for streamlining and efficiency and getting more thematic gameplay with less components and less time.
Less upkeep. Like less card effects to keep track of is like the biggest thing. Like more like, just draw this card, resolve it, move on. And he also asked like favorite Gen Con find. Did we talk about that one?
I think we touched on it. I'm trying to think of but that was just like last year. But I think if we like talked about overall at Gen Con, like just added something we found at Gen Con, like randomly, maybe that's what he means. Or if it's just specifically this year, we talked about that.
This year at Gen Con just felt really like nothing stood out to me.
Yeah,
it was kind of like, it was fun to hang out with Scott and Mitch came to visit, and I grabbed a couple like Frostgrave books and stuff. I grabbed some dice.
I think one of my coolest finds at Gen Con was it's kind of a weird game, but it was a Z-Man game called Beyond Baker Street, and it was like Hanabi. Remember Hanabi, where you had like the backwards hand of cards and you're building fireworks, but it's like a cooperative. It's a cooperative game where you can't see your cards and you're trying to play the right card and everything. It's kind of like that, but you're trying to solve cases, and it's a very complex rule set for a light game, but it's just really cool thematically. And I wish I played it more often, but because it's just got a lot of minutia to deal with the rules. But I was glad I picked that up. I just bought it blindly because I thought the box looked cool. So
I think I also actually really like that Arkham Horror like role playing game you got. That starter box was pretty cool.
They got 2 new books they announced. They got the core book, and they just announced they're doing like an adventure book that's going to be coming out early next year. That's
a game I would probably enjoy playing. And he also asked about the D&D 5.5 books. He said, have you had a chance to play a game with the new rules, or maybe just read through the books? What are your thoughts on it? I haven't had a chance to play it, but I did browse it, and from what I've also read articles about things that changed. For the most part, it's the same game as D&D 5th edition. There's just minor changes about like classes have different abilities like that. There's some stuff cleaned up. Like the way the cleric works now is a lot cooler, I think. But they're really very specific things. There's nothing like game changing about it. But like I said, the format of the rulebook is way different, and also backgrounds are a little more like obviously there's no races anymore. They call them species. So you have a species in the background. It feels more of a impactful of your character. Like this is kind of not your class is only part of the picture. They've done that before, but I feel like they really focus on that now, where it's like you want to flesh out your character that you're making, give them a story and stuff like that. But overall, it seems like it's the same game. It feels like if you play D&D 5th edition, you would pick this up no problem.
Is that all for the questions?
That's all I saw.
Cool.
I think.
What we've been watching, I actually have, like, usually I'm kind of pulling stuff out of the back of my pocket thinking like, oh, whatever. But I've been watching, I did the Paramount Plus like free trial this week, just specifically because Riley wanted to watch Scary Movie, like the parody, preface, if anybody hasn't watched these in a while, there's a lot of wieners. I totally forgot about that. It's like a very, it's a obviously it's a raunchy comedy, so it's like it relies on a lot of sex jokes and stuff. But I forgot how much there was. But luckily,
Very
my
vulgar.
my daughter's very mature, and she finds the same kind of stuff funny that I do. So we share a sense of humor in that regard. So those first two movies, though, like as dumb as they are still some really, really funny moments, because the things that stick in your head and you forget about them, and you hear them again, like, oh, we used to quote that all the time. So many moments like that, but pretty fun movies.
I finally got around to finishing that Salem's Lot movie that was on Max. It's weird because visually that movie's cool. Like it feels cool. Like it feels like a classic zombie, like vampire movie. But I just could not get into it. Like I just felt so bored the whole time.
That's the problem. Is like I think the reason is because I had the source material to fall back on, so I knew the references. But like because it was like meant to be a series to give more breathing room, the shift to movie was just like it's very jarring, because like if you don't know the characters, they don't give you enough time to learn who they are. You know, like you don't care.
You don't care about them.
Yeah, you don't like they're in the back. Like for example, there's the one guy where he first comes to town and he meets the girl that's working. Like she doesn't work there in the book, but the guy, the real estate guy, there's like a lot, like whole chapters dedicated to this guy's thought process. He's a really cool character, and they have like one scene where he pops in and he's gone. Yeah. never seen again. So
yeah, it's a shame because like I said, it just the visuals feels like a cool movie. Like
it is. It's
like it looks cool.
Like the intro, I was like so excited because like, oh my god, they captured like how I felt when I read this book. Like, because I was listening to the book on tape, just kind of, I read it a while ago, but I was listening to the audiobook to get ready for the movie. And it's kind of a bummer because the movie, like after the intro, I was like, okay, well, I don't really feel as much as I did when the first like 10 minutes or so just felt really good. I was like, this is, I like the tone. The credit sequence was amazing. But yeah, I mean, I don't fault anybody who didn't like the movie. I think I enjoyed it more because I knew what it was referencing. So
yeah, I didn't dislike it or anything. I just was like, I just couldn't care. Like
it's very forgettable, very forgettable.
And I'm still watching Walking Dead, of course. But that's pretty much what I've been. We didn't mention this in the show, but I really do hope that I hope we get some more previews about Kill Team's future, this joint op stuff. Yeah. And they also talk about some campaign stuff, because if a joint ops campaign would be awesome. Like, I don't know what I want out of it, but I would love some kind of a joint ops campaign book. That'd be great.
Yeah, anything if they like after whatever's beyond the brutal and cunning. Maybe there's joint ops and brutal and cunning. They haven't talked about that. Maybe there's something in there, and maybe that one scenario.
I figured they would have brought that. They would have mentioned that, but yeah, they haven't had in-depth previews yet. So we'll see.
But yeah, that's everything. That's our first episode of November, because it's like November 4th already. So Halloween's done. Next up, we'll have
this is dropping on the 5th.
Is it? Oh yeah, because today's
it's election day, November 5th.
Yeah. Give yourself a distraction, because I'll be dead drunk probably. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week when we talk about God knows what.
See you later.